The morning brought relief from the harsh weather, and with it the snow began to disappear, leaving only about 10 inches in its wake on this evening. But our horses have grown restless, yearning for more food. Grass patches are limited under the snow, and their movement is restricted by the length of their ropes, making foraging harder for them. We've had no trouble with Indians following us since we made our first camp by the lake, and there are few indications that they have ever been here, bar a few logs piled up to conceal hunters aiming to shoot game in the lake. We're inclined to believe that Jake Smith's claim of seeing Indians on the beach was pure imagination and fear, as there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. Each night we hear the mountain lions' piercing cries, mistake them for humans in distress momentarily. Being fond of horseflesh, we keep a close watch on them, realizing that oftentimes they follow horsemen for the meat and not to attack riders. We've spent 3 days in this camp so far, and I've used the time to document my journey in my diary, specifically September the 8th, 9th, and 10th days of great anxiety. Today I had a good nap while Lieutenant Doane borrowed my diary, and I feel refreshed, although my first thought is of poor Everts. I wonder where he is amidst all this harsh weather and deep snow. Perhaps the snowstorm didn't reach him, for the ground is bare on the opposite side of the lake from where we are. But on this side, the snow is 8 to 10 inches deep. Hauser isn't feeling very well tonight, and that's concerning. Friday, September 16th. We woke up this morning with a plan to head over to the area surrounding the hot springs on the opposite side of the lake. From there, our hope was to make our way towards the Madison River or one of its many branches. We started by walking along the beach for half a mile, but then had to navigate through the woods for a mile to avoid the treacherous quicksands on the lake shore. Finally, we returned to the beach and journeyed towards the springs where we're currently camping. These springs are unlike anything we've ever seen before. The sheer variety and extent of them are breathtaking. They stretch out for nearly a mile along the shore of the lake and feature between 90 and 100 different springs, each with their own unique qualities. The ones furthest from the beach are the boiling mud springs. Some have mud so thin that it barely covers the surface, while others have such thick mud that the boiling mixture is heaped up and slowly spreads out as it gets heavier. The mud itself comes in different colors, ranging from white to lavender to pink. Near these boiling mud springs are the nearly clear, odorless water springs. The bottoms of these springs and the channels of streams that run from them are covered in soft deposits of a substance that they contain in their solution. These deposits, as well as the hard incrustations around the edges of the springs, are various colors ranging from dark red to scarlet to yellow to green. Along the shore of the lake we came across several boiling springs situated on the tops of encrusted craters. These springs didn't boil over since the sediment that was deposited around them formed a wall or embankment which held back the water. It's incredible to see how the landscape is shaped by these natural wonders. At this point, some remarkable springs are quite unlike any of the others. There are 6 or 7 of these unique springs, and they draw your attention with their dark blue or ultramarine-colored water that is as clear and transparent as glass. 2 of these springs are quite sizable, and the other 5 are smaller, with diameters ranging from 8 to 15 feet. One of the smaller springs even throws its water 2 feet into the air. The 2 largest springs are almost oval-shaped but have irregular outlines. The first one is about 25 feet wide and 40 feet long, while the other one is smaller at about 20 by 30 feet. Each spring discharges approximately 1 gallon of water per minute. These springs have a funnel shape as the sides converge downwards until they reach a depth of 30 feet, where the opening is only about 8 feet in diameter. From the surface down to the lowest point of convergence where the opening widens again, the funnel's sides are corrugated, rough, and irregular. These sides are covered in a stark white deposit or incrustation, which brilliantly contrasts with the dark opening at the spring's base. This base is visible when a depth of 40 feet is reached. The 2 large springs are spaced approximately 20 yards apart, with a difference of 4 feet in the elevation of their water levels. A unique feature they all share is that, despite similar appearances and different temperatures, they seem to have no connection beneath the surface. This makes it possible to discover springs situated just 5 or 6 feet apart, each with varying water levels. For many years, the springs had been overflowing and forming a crusty bank that towered over the edge of the lake. This bank had been forming for eons, reaching a height of 6 feet. Each stream that flowed from the springs had its own unique hue, depending on the deposit or substance in the solution. As a result, the encrusted bank reflected all of these varied colors as it continued to form over time. Parts of the encrusted deposit had broken down and crumbled into small pieces, which were then molded by the waves into countless shapes. With colors ranging from white to red to green, these shapes were whimsical and fascinating to observe. The cavernous hollows on the shore created eerie echoes in response to the sound of the waves. The streams flowing from the deeper springs had a pure white incrustation. As the slope grew steeper, the deposit became white in the center with red sides. Even farther down, the white deposit was entirely hidden by a mix of red and yellow. We had retrieved specimens of these incrustations from all the springs, but they were too hot to be touched without gloves. Along the lake's border we saw small craters emitting hot steam or vapor, as well as numerous cold craters. Out in the water, between 10 and 30 feet from shore, were springs with water bubbling up above the surface. No spring was heavily infused with sulfur in this area. Some of the incrustations on the beach had a delicate, alabaster-like appearance. These were the springs that we had spotted on September the 5th from our campsite on the lake's east shore. Our journey through Yellowstone has come to an end, and tomorrow we will begin our quest for Firehole Basin. Our adventure around the lake, so close to its picturesque shore, may be the first of its kind. Though it has tested our endurance, the joy it has brought me is immeasurable. The mere thought of leaving is painful. What words adequately describe the splendor of Yellowstone? The lake is studded with islands that are yet untouched by humanity. I can envision these jewels of nature, once unspoiled, becoming adorned with grand villas and the trappings of civilization. The winds from deep within the mountains stir its calm waters into an angry maelstrom. Their force causes waves to crash and bubble with frothy foam. Pine forests stand sentinel along its borders, dark and deep, almost impassable. Its pristine shores are stunning, presenting exquisite beaches of varied sand and pebbles, glittering with precious stones of chalcedony, carnelian, and crystal. The natives hold the lake in sacred awe, heightened by the volcanic activity that surrounds it, and their reverence demands almost complete isolation. The lake harbors a vast potential for artifice, to be shaped by the wonders of nature that the world has to offer. The magnificence of the mountain ranges serves to emphasize the beauty of these surroundings. It won't be long before mankind lays claim to this land, transforming the wilderness to reflect cultivated refinement at its finest. In this vast expanse of natural wonders, we've encountered many strange and interesting objects, but none have provided us greater relief and joy than this very campsite. Our first stop since escaping the dense forest, we were gloomy and tired, injured and famished. We looked more like a group of beggars than a team of explorers in search of nature's greatest secrets. Nevertheless, we trust that our journey from here will be easier than it has been thus far. We owe much of our success in navigating the area to Mr. Hauser, a civil engineer with a wealth of experience leading the way. He's incredibly adept at reading the land and giving directions, but he claims that I have a better understanding of mountain heights, distances, and directions than anyone else he's worked with, aside from James Stewart. I humbly accept his compliment. Some of our teammates fear that if they ever wandered into the forest while looking for Mr. Everts, they'd never find their way back to camp again. I sat with Washburn and Hauser by the fire and recited a passage from Cowper's The Task, which I had committed to memory in my younger days. The words perfectly captured our journey around the lake and our current sense of relief. Like someone lost in thickets and underbrush, wandering aimlessly, uncertain of the way home. After struggling through muddy swamps and feeling disheartened at every dead end, finally stumbling upon a smooth, grassy plain brings a rush of renewed vigor. He encourages his horse and joyfully traverses the path with ease and pleasure. We lamented the fact that we must leave this place and abandon our search for Mr. Everts. Yet, with our food supplies dwindling, we have no choice but to press forward. We hold on to the hope that he has found safety along the Madison or Snake River, and we must prioritize our journey home to prove or disprove our expectations. Still, it pains us to have to pass by many interesting sights we have encountered along the way. As we sat and talked, Hauser admitted to feeling unwell and not eating anything all day. His acknowledgment held a weight that few others would, as I knew from years of journeying with him that he faced hardship and deprivation with uncomplaining acceptance. If he is too sick to travel tomorrow, I will stay behind with him while the others forge ahead. We'll follow their path to the Firehole River, and in doing so cover 2 days of their journey in one, hopefully rejoining them when they cross the river. Saturday, September 17th morning. I awoke well before dawn this morn to a mighty sound echoing from the nearby hot springs. These pools, inactive only yesterday, were now in tumultuous commotion, some of them overflowing with water once several feet below the brim. Amid this chaos, my trusty saddle horse, spooked by the ruckus, broke free of his tether and stumbled perilously close to one of the springs. The hardened crust surrounding the pool gave way, and my steed sank to his midsection in the seething water. Thankfully, he gallantly struggled free, though not before he sliced his hoof so badly that riding today is out of the question. Instead, I will trust in my sturdier pack horse, who has recovered well from the burns sustained during our trip to Brown Mountain, even though much of his hair has fallen out. Amidst these dolorous circumstances, my companions and I found our spirits afflicted with the grim realization that we must soon leave this beautiful lake and abandon our search for Mr. Evarts. We have examined every angle of this matter and tried to anticipate every possible fate that may have befallen our lost friend. Does he still cling to the faint hope of rescue, or has he succumbed to the brutal wilderness, drowning in one of the many streams, or perhaps suffering under the scourge of fever and starvation, wandering aimlessly until the ravages of malnutrition have come to claim him? All the while we must consider the grim possibility that he has fallen to the savage hand of some warlike Indian, who saw him as a trespasser in their ancestral homeland. The agony of this ordeal presses down on us like a great weight, and it is with a heavy heart that we pack up our meager supplies and head out on our sad journey. After much discussion, we have come to a final decision on our course of action. We will offer Gillette 10 days' worth of provisions from our dwindling stock, and Lieutenant Doane will delegate Privates Moore and Williamson to accompany him with an additional 10 days' worth of rations. Together, the three of them will continue the search from this very spot. Gillette believes that with this extra supply, they can search continuously for 5 days before using the remaining 5 days to push hard and catch up to the rest of us. Hauser tried to lift the spirit of the group at the meeting by teasing Gillette. "I reckon I'd be willing to spend another 10 days in this wild country if it meant I could find myself a father-in-law," he jested. Laughter erupted around the group, and we all knew that Hauser was hinting at the many generous acts Gillette had performed for Bessie Evarts, the witty and captivating Montanan girl who was our lost companion's daughter. This quip gave me hope that Hauser was recovering well, and if Gillette were to find Evarts, we could share in the joy of another Childe Harold moment. A rapture on the lonely shore. Saturday, September 17th evening. Gillette, Moore, and Williamson departed from our camp this morning at 9 a.m. to embark on their final search for Mr. Evarts. As for the rest of our party, we continued on our journey. Today we managed to travel about 12 miles, but only half of the distance proved to be an easy walk through some open timber. The other half forced us to tread through prostrate pines without any marked trails, making it increasingly difficult for us to navigate. Nonetheless, the blockages on this part of the journey seemed less menacing than those we encountered on the south shore of Yellowstone Lake. At noon we crossed a high ridge, which we ascended steeply. However, upon descending to the other side, we noticed a large lake on our left. Lieutenant Doane and some members of our group affirmed that the lake was at the head of the Firehole River. They advised us to make our way there and use the stream that flows from it as our guide towards the Firehole. They argued that such a move would relieve us from any uncertainty concerning the course we should take. However, Hauser and I believed we could still reach the Firehole River by following our present westerly direction, just as distinctly as if we obeyed their approach. Our confidence rested on the fact that this large lake was undoubtedly the head of Snake River. Later in the afternoon we encountered another ridge and descended to a small open valley where we stumbled upon a spring of good water. We are now camped near the tiny creek that runs in a direction slightly north of west. I think this creek flows to either the Firehole or the Madison River. We've been following our compasses for direction today, but we didn't consider making an allowance for the variation of the magnetic needle. I suppose it's around 20 degrees east of the true meridian. Hence, as we aimed to follow a westerly course, in reality we took a course around 20 degrees north of west. As we rode past the expansive lake on our left today, I couldn't help but notice that there was no ridge separating us from the glittering body of water. This leads me to believe that we are in the Snake River Valley, and that we have twice crossed the main range of the Rocky Mountains today. The ease with which one can access the Snake River Valley from Yellowstone Lake gives me hope that Mr. Everts, who has been lost in these wilds, may have found his way out and to safety in the valley. Although there's still a thick layer of 4 or 5 inches of snow blanketing the ground, there's enough long grass peeking through it to keep our horses content. They'll soon fill their bellies with either grass or snow. Unfortunately, there's no open space big enough for us to set up our tent. After a sparse and mediocre supper, each man is on the hunt for a dry spot to lay their blankets under the protection of a pine tree. Some of my companions seem exhausted from our journey, while others appear to be emotionally drained. The question of where we currently are lingers heavily in their minds, and they debate whether or not the large lake we saw spills its waters into the Snake River. They wonder, if it does, have we crossed back over to the eastern slope? As for me, I'm not sure when I've felt more optimistic since leaving my home. I'm confident we're on the correct path and feel no apprehension. The sky tonight, my friends, is a canvas of pure midnight blue, speckled with 1,000,000 twinkling stars. But despite the beauty above, the world around us is in a hurry to shed its winter coat, as the melting snow rushes to find its escape through the rocky terrain. As we bed down for the night, my companion Hedges and I are greeted by a curious scent on the breeze, a musky premonition of the impending rain that threatens to soak us before dawn breaks. We have staked our claim for sleep, and with the sensibilities of seasoned outdoor enthusiasts, I've constructed a sturdy shelter to keep us dry should the heavens unleash their watery wrath. Our humble abode takes the form of a wickiup, fashioned from luscious green boughs of the majestic pine, whose tender needles overlap like tiles on a roof. I encourage the rest of our comrades to take notice of the shifting winds and prepare in much the same way. Though I am confident in our provisions, my friend Hedges laments the uncertainty of the forecast, and his spirits sag with anxious apprehension. But even as we drift away to sleep, I remind him of the gifts of Mother Nature and the unforeseen joys she can bestow upon the humble traveler even amidst the direst of circumstances. Sunday, September 18th. At 7:30 in the morning, a serious mishap befell our party. Bean and Reynolds, our packers, are currently fixing the damage caused by the said mishap. But before I delve into that particular event, let me first recount the happenings of the early morning. At 4 o'clock, Mr. Hedges and I were roused from our slumber within the safety of our pine-thatched wickiup. A few members of our party sought refuge from the unrelenting rain that began pouring down around 3 o'clock. Those who did not have the protection of our makeshift shelter were thoroughly drenched, with their blankets only providing minimal cover. Some members tried and failed to build a fire under a large standing tree, and by the time we were awoken, their spirits had dampened almost as much as their clothes. My companion and I made room for all who sought sanctuary from the rain under our dry shelter. General Washburn, suffering from a cold, was particularly grateful. The storm lasted until around 7 o'clock. As we sat down for breakfast, some members of our party ate their scanty meal in silence, looking forlorn and disheartened. The disappointment of not reaching the Firehole River or finding some other guiding feature toward home weighed heavily on them. However, I am confident in our course and the direction we are headed, and thus my spirits remain buoyant. During breakfast, the sorry state of our companions became fully apparent. They were soggy, half-dried, and covered in mud, and as we sat there eating and chatting, a mishap befell us. But that is a tale for another time. My spirit is soaring, though my companions are dampened by their wet clothes and soggy skin. I can't help but feel grateful for the dryness of my attire. But even more, I trust in the capabilities of Mr. Hauser, his keen sense of direction, and his impeccable judgment of distance and mountain heights. And he confirms that we're heading the right way. I'm comforted by his assessment. Our satisfying meal had just ended when we heard a commotion from our horses. A wild animal? A snake, perhaps? 3 of our steeds were spooked, thrashing about and pulling free from their picket pins. They careened through our camp, plowing over our cooking supplies. The iron stakes attached to their lariats whizzed through the air, narrowly avoiding my fellow hikers. But our 2 remaining pack saddles weren't as lucky. The stakes crashed into them, damaging the sides beyond recognition. At first we thought the destruction was irreparable, but I had a few tricks up my sleeve. A couple of thin boards from our canned food boxes, plus some tools, 2 gimlets, a screwdriver, a pair of nippers, and a handful of screws and nails were stowed away in my knapsack. My companions were shocked. None of them knew we had access to such resources. It's quite surprising to me that I am the only member of our party equipped with a rubber coat, oil-tanned waterproof boots, medicines, tools, screws, and more. I'm also not the only one who has brought a flask of whiskey with them, but I won't disclose the identity of the other member. I suspect that our group will earn the nickname the Temperance Party among those who visit this incredible region in the future. Unfortunately, some members who failed to bring snakebite remedy before leaving, Helena had to rely on hindsight to treat their afflictions. Bean and Reynolds just announced that the pack saddles have been repaired and that we are preparing to depart. With that, I'll pause my record until nightfall. Sunday, September 18th evening. We departed from our morning camp at approximately 9 o'clock, forging ahead through a maze of scattered tree trunks for roughly 3 miles. Our anxiety over the uncertainty of our route was quickly resolved when we stumbled upon the Firehole River, the most substantial fork of the Madison. We followed the river for 5 miles, reveling in the magnificence of several boiling spring clusters and a delightful cascade, which we neglected to christen. Eventually we emerged from the thick forest to discover a secluded basin lying 2 miles above the Firehole River's juncture, with a meandering stream flowing in from the southwest. This sprawling basin spanned a width of 1 mile and cradled the river until it constricted between near-the-end ranges 2 miles south of our encampment, dedicating the entire afternoon to examining the springs and geysers. I shall defer recollecting today's exploration until we're prepared to advance beyond the basin. Monday, September 19th. 2 days prior, we had set out from Yellowstone Lake, our longing for home overpowering any desire for further adventure. We were certain that 5 days of swift travel would bring us to the upper valley of the Madison, just 25 miles from Virginia City. Perhaps we would discover some clue to the whereabouts of Mr. Evarts. We had already witnessed what we believed to be the most astonishing sights on the continent, firmly convinced that there was no other place on earth where such grandeur and novelty were so densely packed within such a small area. Imagine our disbelief when, as we traversed the valley ahead, we beheld a vast, shimmering body of water, ejected from the earth's surface with tremendous force, spouting upward to a height of 100 feet. We had stumbled upon a bona fide geyser. Before us lay a valley brimming with 1,000 hot springs of every size and shape, and 500 craters spewing steam. Our eyes followed a stream of scorching water flowing sideways for a considerable distance, defying the laws of physics. We followed its course, tracing its path through crevices where it ran parallel to the river. Eventually it must have merged with the fire hole, but there was no visible indication of the path it took beneath the earth's surface to reach the river. Upon a 25-foot-tall cone we found a boiling spring measuring 7 feet in diameter, encircled by splendid calcifications. We plucked twigs covered in a 1/4-inch thick crust from its slopes. On a nearby hill adorned with calcareous deposits, we discovered 4 craters ranging from 3 to 5 feet in diameter, expelling jets of steam and water up to 5 feet in height. The most remarkable attraction was without a doubt the spouting geysers, of which we witnessed a dozen in just 22 hours. Although 6 of these erupted to heights ranging from 15 to 20 feet, they paled in comparison to the massive geysers that loomed over us.